Jasmine Williams was the kind of girl who seemed to fold into herself. She walked the halls of Lincoln High with her shoulders slightly hunched as if trying to take up as little space as possible. Her dark brown eyes, bright with intelligence, were usually cast downward, focused on the tiled floor or the pages of whatever book she was currently lost in. Today it was a worn copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God, its corners softened from countless readings. At 16, Jasmine had mastered the art of being invisible. It wasn't that she was unfriendly. She smiled at familiar faces and was unfailingly polite to teachers. But she had learned early on that in the ecosystem of high school, drawing attention often led to trouble. And trouble was something Jasmine avoided at all costs. "You're going to be late again," her best friend Zoe said, closing her locker with a metallic clang that echoed down the busy hallway. Unlike Jasmine, Zoe commanded attention with her colorful clothes and loud laugh. "Mrs. Patterson already gave you that look last time." Jasmine checked her watch and sighed. I know. I got caught up helping Mr. Chen organize the lab supplies during lunch." She tucked her book into her backpack and quickened her pace. "Always the helpful one," Zoe teased, bumping Jasmine's shoulder playfully. "That's why everybody likes you." "Not everybody," Jasmine mumbled, her eyes darting nervously toward the end of the hallway where a group of seniors had gathered. At the center of the group stood Trevor Collins, tall and broad-shouldered in his varsity jacket. His sandy blonde hair was carefully styled in that deliberately messy way that took more time than most people realized. Everything about him screamed confidence, from the way he leaned against the wall to the easy smile he flashed at passing girls. But Jasmine knew better. She had seen the way that smile disappeared when teachers turned their backs, had witnessed how quickly that charm could turn to cruelty. "Just ignore him," Zoe whispered, noticing her friend's unease. "He's just a jerk with too much time on his hands." Jasmine nodded, but she couldn't help remembering their last encounter. 3 weeks ago, she had been hurrying to class, arms full of books, when she'd accidentally bumped into Trevor. Her books had scattered across the floor, and while she'd scrambled to pick them up, Trevor had just stood there laughing with his friends. "Watch where you're going, bookworm," he'd sneered. "Or are those glasses just for show?" It wasn't the worst thing anyone had ever said to her, but something about the way he'd looked at her, like she was less than nothing, had stuck with her. The warning bell rang, startling Jasmine from her thoughts. "Come on," Zoe urged, pulling her along. "We can go the long way around." They made it to English class just as the final bell rang, sliding into their seats as Mrs. Patterson gave them a pointed look. Jasmine pulled out her notebook, trying to focus on the discussion about Harlem Renaissance literature, but her mind kept wandering. It wasn't just Trevor. There had been others before him, kids who seemed to pick up on some invisible signal that marked Jasmine as an easy target. In elementary school, it had been comments about her hair. In middle school, jokes about how she always had her hand up in class. Now in high school, it was a mix of everything. Her quiet nature, her bookishness, the fact that she was one of only 27 black students in a school of over 1,000. Her mom called it small-minded nonsense and told Jasmine to hold her head high. "You come from a long line of strong women," she would say. "Don't let anyone dim your light." Her dad was more pragmatic. "Just focus on your studies. That diploma will take you places they can't follow." Jasmine had taken their advice to heart. She maintained a 4.0 GPA, participated in science club and debate team, and volunteered at the local library on weekends. She had plans, big ones, that involved scholarships and universities far from Lincoln High. Sometimes, when Trevor or others like him made her feel small, she would close her eyes and imagine herself walking across a college campus, surrounded by people who valued ideas and kindness over social hierarchies. "Jasmine, would you like to share your thoughts on Hurston's use of dialect?" Mrs. Patterson's voice snapped her back to the present. Jasmine straightened in her seat, grateful that she had read the book twice already. "Hurston uses dialect to capture the authentic voices of her characters," she began, her voice soft but clear. "It wasn't just about how people spoke, but about preserving the richness of a culture that many writers of her time ignored or misrepresented." Mrs. Patterson nodded approvingly. "Excellent point." Hurston was indeed revolutionary in her approach. From across the room, Jasmine caught Trevor's friend Dylan making exaggerated blah-blah motions with his hand. A few students snickered. Mrs. Patterson, following Jasmine's gaze, frowned. "Perhaps you'd like to add something, Dylan?" Dylan's hand dropped. No, ma'am. Then I suggest you focus on taking notes. This will be on the exam. The rest of the class passed without incident, but Jasmine felt a familiar knot forming in her stomach. She'd drawn attention again, and in Trevor's world, that was practically an invitation. When the bell rang, she gathered her things quickly, hoping to leave before Dylan could report back to Trevor. But as she stepped into the hallway, she felt a presence beside her. Hey, Brainiac. Trevor's voice was deceptively casual. Got a minute? Jasmine kept walking. I'm going to be late for class. Trevor easily kept pace with her. I just wanted to ask if you'd help me with something. She glanced at him suspiciously. What? I'm failing Patterson's class. Coach says if I don't get my grades up, I'm off the team. He didn't sound particularly concerned. I heard you're the best in the class. Thought maybe you could, help me out. Jasmine knew what help me out meant. It wasn't tutoring he wanted. It was her doing his work for him. I don't think so, she said, her voice quiet but firm. But the writing center is open after school. They could help you. Trevor's friendly demeanor vanished. Too good to help out a classmate? That's not what Save it, he cut her off. I don't need help from someone like you anyway. The someone like you hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Jasmine felt her cheeks burn, but she kept walking, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing how his words affected her. The rest of the day passed in a blur of classes and careful hallway navigation. By the time the final bell rang, Jasmine was exhausted. All she wanted was to get home, lose herself in her homework, and forget about Trevor Collins. The afternoon bus was always crowded, a noisy, chaotic mass of students eager to escape school grounds. Jasmine usually sat near the front next to the driver, Mr. Wilson, a kind older man who often saved her a spot. But today, as she climbed the steps, she saw with dismay that the front seats were filled with freshmen. Sorry, Jasmine, Mr. Wilson said, noticing her hesitation. Got some new riders today. Plenty of room in the back, though. Jasmine nodded, tightening her grip on her backpack as she made her way down the aisle. She kept her eyes forward, trying to ignore the various conversations, arguments, and antics happening around her. The further back she went, the louder it got. And then she saw them. Trevor and his friends sprawled across the last few rows. Trevor was sitting by the window, one arm draped casually over the back of the seat. His friend Ryan sat beside him, while Dylan and a few other boys occupied the surrounding seats. They hadn't noticed her yet, too engrossed in whatever they were watching on Ryan's phone. Jasmine hesitated, considering her options. She could turn around, try to squeeze in with the freshmen up front, but that would mean walking past Trevor's group twice, and it would definitely draw their attention. There was an empty seat a few rows ahead of them. If she could just slip into it quietly. She took a deep breath and moved forward, keeping her movements small and deliberate. Just a few more steps, and well, look who it is. Dylan's voice carried over the general noise of the bus. The girl who made me look stupid in English. Trevor looked up, his eyes finding Jasmine instantly. A slow smile spread across his face. Not the charming one he used on teachers, but the one that reminded Jasmine of a predator spotting prey. Perfect timing, he said, nudging Ryan. We were just talking about you. Jasmine's heart sank. She'd been so close to making it through the day without another encounter. She slid into the empty seat quickly, hoping they would lose interest if she ignored them. Hey, I'm talking to you, Trevor called. When she didn't respond, he kicked the back of her seat lightly. Don't be rude now. The bus lurched forward, beginning its route. Jasmine pulled out her book, trying to create a barrier between herself and the boys behind her. But she couldn't focus on the words. All she could hear was their laughter, the occasional comment just loud enough for her to catch. Thinks she's so smart. Probably thinks she's better than everyone. Did you see those glass? Says, like something my grandma would wear. The bus hit a pothole, jostling everyone. Jasmine's book slipped from her hands, falling to the floor. Before she could reach for it, Ryan's foot shot out from the seat behind her, sending the book skidding down the aisle. Oops, he said with exaggerated innocence. Jasmine stared after her book, torn between the desire to retrieve it and the fear of drawing more attention to herself. The bus was moving too fast now for her to get up safely. Better go get that, Trevor taunted. Unless you're too scared to stand up? Jasmine remained seated, her hands clenched in her lap. Just 10 more minutes, she told herself. 10 more minutes and she'd be at her stop. She thought about what her parents would say if they could see her now. Her mother would tell her to stand up for herself. Her father would say that people like Trevor weren't worth her time or energy. But sitting there feeling small and powerless, Jasmine couldn't help but wonder if there was a third option, one that didn't involve confrontation or simply enduring in silence. There had to be another way to deal with people like Trevor. As the bus approached her stop, Jasmine finally stood up. She walked down the aisle, picked up her book, and then turned to face the back of the bus. For a brief moment, her eyes met Trevor's. He looked surprised. He'd expected her to keep her head down, to scurry off the bus without a backward glance. Instead, she held his gaze steadily before turning away. It wasn't much, barely a stand at all, but it was something. A tiny crack in the invisible armor she'd built around herself. And as she stepped off the bus into the afternoon sunlight, Jasmine Williams wondered what might happen if she stopped trying to be invisible after all. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching Jasmine's mood as she stared out her bedroom window. She'd barely slept, replaying yesterday's bus ride in her mind like a bad movie. The sound of Trevor's laughter, the thud of her book hitting the bus floor, the heavy weight of eyes watching her. It all swirled in her head, making her stomach twist into knots. Jasmine. "Breakfast is ready," her mother's voice floated up from downstairs. With a sigh, Jasmine pulled herself away from the window. She caught her reflection in the mirror. Dark circles under her eyes, her usual neat appearance slightly rumpled from tossing and turning all night. She straightened her shoulders, remembering how she'd held Trevor's gaze before leaving the bus. It had been a small thing, but it had felt important somehow. Downstairs, her parents moved around the kitchen in their familiar morning dance, her mother at the stove flipping pancakes, her father at the table reading news on his tablet while sipping coffee. "There she is," her father said, looking up with a smile that quickly faded when he saw her face. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" "Just tired," Jasmine said, sliding into her chair. "Big test coming up." Her mother set a plate of pancakes in front of her. "You work too hard. Don't forget to breathe once in a while." Jasmine nodded, grateful they didn't push for more. Her parents were good that way. They knew when to ask questions and when to give space. Still, she felt a pang of guilt for not telling them about Trevor. But what would she say? That some boy was making rude comments? That he kicked her book? It all seemed so small when put into words, even though it felt enormous when it was happening. "Do you need a ride to school today?" her father asked, eyeing the rain outside. "I can drop you on my way to work." Jasmine considered it. A ride meant avoiding the morning bus. It meant one less chance of running into Trevor. "That would be great," she said, feeling some of the tension leave her shoulders. "Thanks, Dad." The ride to school was quiet, just the gentle patter of rain and the soft jazz her father always played in the car. Jasmine leaned her head against the window, watching raindrops race down the glass, you know. Her father said after a while, "When I was about your age, there was this kid named Robert who used to give me a hard time." Jasmine turned to look at him, surprised. Her father rarely talked about his own school days. "What did he do?" she asked. "Oh, the usual stuff. Called me names, knocked my books down, tried to trip me in the hallway." He shrugged. "One day he cornered me after gym class. I thought he was going to beat me up." Jasmine sat up straighter. "What happened?" I asked him why he hated me so much. Her father's eyes remained on the road, but a small smile played at the corner of his mouth. "Turned out he thought I was showing off in English class because I always had the answers. His dad was real hard on him about grades, and he was failing English. So what did you do?" I offered to help him study. He glanced at her. "Not saying that's what you should do if someone's giving you trouble. Just saying that sometimes people lash out because of their own problems. Doesn't make it right, but it might help you understand." Jasmine nodded, thinking about Trevor. What was his story? Did he have one, or was he just mean? "Thanks for the ride," she said as they pulled up to the school. Her father reached over and squeezed her hand. "Remember, you're a Williams. We don't break easily." The morning passed without incident. Jasmine kept her head down, moved quickly between classes, and managed to avoid Trevor and his friends. By lunchtime, she was starting to think maybe yesterday had been a fluke. Maybe Trevor had already moved on to bothering someone else. "You look like you're hiding from someone," Zoe said as they sat down at their usual lunch table. "Just tired," Jasmine replied. The same excuse she'd given her parents. Zoe raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Instead, she launched into a story about drama in her art class, and Jasmine let herself relax, laughing at Zoe's animated retelling. The peace didn't last. Well, if it isn't the brain trust, came a voice from behind them. Jasmine's shoulders tensed as Trevor dropped into an empty seat at their table, uninvited. Ryan and Dylan flanked him, standing behind his chair like bodyguards. "What do you want?" Zoe asked, her voice sharp. Trevor ignored her, his eyes fixed on Jasmine. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday." "We didn't have a conversation," Jasmine said quietly. "Sure we did. You said you wouldn't help me with my English assignment." He leaned forward. "But I think you should reconsider." Jasmine met his gaze. "I already told you the writing center. I don't want the writing center," Trevor cut in. "I want you to help me. Everyone knows you're the smartest kid in class." It should have been a compliment, but the way he said it made it sound like an accusation. "She said no," Zoe interjected. "Maybe you should work on your hearing along with your English grade." Trevor's eyes flicked to Zoe, hardening. "Nobody asked you." "Well, I'm telling you anyway," Zoe shot back. "Leave her alone." Trevor stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You know what? I was trying to be nice, but if that's how you want it..." He left the threat hanging in the air, nodded to his friends, and walked away. Jasmine let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thanks," she said to Zoe. "That guy is such a jerk," Zoe muttered. "You should report him." Jasmine shook her head. "For what? He didn't actually do anything. He's intimidating you. There's no rule against being unpleasant." Jasmine poked at her lunch, no longer hungry. Besides, reporting him would just make things worse. The rest of the day crawled by. In English class, Jasmine could feel Trevor watching her from across the room. In the hallway, she glimpsed him and his friends watching her. It was like being stalked by a predator. The constant awareness of being hunted made her jumpy and distracted. By the time the final bell rang, Jasmine was exhausted from the constant vigilance. She stood at her locker, considering her options. She could call her mom for a ride, but her mom would be in the middle of her shift at the hospital. She could walk, but it was still raining, and her house was 3 miles away. That left the bus. "I'll walk out with you," Zoe offered, clearly noticing Jasmine's hesitation. They joined the stream of students heading toward the buses, Jasmine scanning the crowd nervously for any sign of Trevor or his friends. "He's probably already gone," Zoe reassured her, "or maybe he got detention. That would be karma." But as they approached bus number 42, Jasmine's heart sank. There was Trevor standing near the bus door with Ryan and Dylan, watching the students board. His eyes lit up when he spotted her. "I can wait with you for the next bus," Zoe suggested, but Jasmine shook her head. "The next one isn't for an hour. And you have dance class." She forced a smile. "I'll be fine. It's just a bus ride." Zoe didn't look convinced, but she had already missed dance twice this month and couldn't afford another absence. "Text me when you get home, okay?" Jasmine promised she would, then took a deep breath and approached the bus. "Dear." Trevor made no move to block her way, which somehow made her more nervous, not less. What was he planning? The bus was more crowded than usual, probably due to the rain. Students were packed into seats, some even sitting 3 to a row meant for 2. Jasmine moved down the aisle slowly, looking for an empty spot. There wasn't one. By the time she reached the back of the bus, she realized she'd have to either stand for the whole ride or ask someone to make room. Neither option appealed to her, especially with Trevor and his friends filing onto the bus behind her. "Looks like we're all out of seats," Trevor said loudly. "What a shame." A few students looked up, then quickly looked away, unwilling to get involved. Mr. Wilson called from the front, "Everyone needs to find a seat. We can't move until everyone's seated." "You heard the man," Trevor said with mock politeness. "Everyone needs a seat." Jasmine turned, intending to move toward the front again, maybe ask Mr. Wilson if she could stand. But Trevor and his friends had positioned themselves in the aisle, effectively blocking her path. "Excuse me," she said, her voice coming out smaller than she intended. Trevor didn't budge. "You know, I'm still waiting for an answer about that English assignment." "I already told you no." Jasmine tried to keep her voice steady. "Please let me pass." "The bus is pretty full," Ryan chimed in. "Maybe if you were nicer to people, someone would make room for you." Jasmine glanced around desperately. Most students were pretending not to notice what was happening, their eyes fixed on phones or out windows. A few were watching with open curiosity. One girl, Lily Chen from her chemistry class, looked like she might say something. But then Trevor shot her a look and she turned away. "I just want to go home," Jasmine said, hating the slight tremor in her voice. "And I just want some help with my assignment," Trevor countered. Seems like we both want something. The bus engine rumbled to life. Mr. Wilson called back again. Everyone seated? Before Jasmine could respond, Trevor called out, "All good back here." The bus lurched forward, causing Jasmine to grab a seat back to keep her balance. With the bus now moving, she was trapped, standing in the narrow aisle surrounded by Trevor and his friends with nowhere to go. "Looks like you're stuck with us," Dylan smirked. Jasmine's mind raced. She could call out to Mr. Wilson, but what would she say? That these boys wouldn't let her sit down? That they were standing too close to her? None of it sounded serious enough to bother the driver while he was navigating the busy after-school traffic. "Just leave me alone," she said, trying to make herself as small as possible in the limited space. "We're just talking," Trevor said, his voice all innocence. "Isn't that allowed?" The bus hit a pothole, jolting everyone. Trevor stumbled slightly, moving even closer to Jasmine. She pressed herself against the window, heart hammering in her chest. Through the window, she could see other students on other buses laughing and talking normally. Just minutes ago, she had been one of them. Worried about tests and homework, not about being cornered on a moving bus. Something shifted inside her then. A quiet anger began to build, pushing back against the fear. She thought of her father's words that morning. "We don't break easily." She straightened her posture, looking Trevor directly in the eye. "What you're doing right now," she said, her voice steady and clear despite her racing heart. "This isn't going to end the way you think it is." Trevor blinked, clearly not expecting resistance. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face, quickly replaced by his usual smirk. "Oh yeah?" he challenged. "And how exactly do you think this is going to end?" Jasmine didn't know the answer yet. But looking at Trevor's smug face, at the faces of the other students pretending not to see what was happening, at her own reflection in the bus window, she knew something had to change. And maybe, just maybe, she was the one who needed to change it. Time seemed to slow down in the crowded school bus. The rumble of the engine, the chatter of other students, the rain pattering against the windows, all of it faded into the background as Jasmine stood face to face with Trevor. "I asked you a question," Trevor said. His voice, lower now, meant only for her ears. "How exactly do you think this is going to end?" Jasmine's mind raced. She had spoken without thinking, pushed by a sudden surge of courage or maybe desperation. Now Trevor was waiting for an answer she didn't have. Or did she? For weeks she had watched Trevor and his friends target different students. A freshman with braces, a boy from the chess club, the new transfer student who spoke with an accent. Each time Jasmine had looked away, grateful it wasn't her turn. "Until now, I've been watching you," she said finally, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Not just today. For months." Trevor's eyebrows rose slightly, but he kept his smirk in place. "Didn't know you cared so much." "I don't," Jasmine replied. "But I do care about what happens at this school. What you're allowed to get away with." She reached slowly into her backpack, maintaining eye contact with Trevor. His friends shifted uneasily, exchanging glances. Jasmine pulled out her phone, her fingers finding the right app without looking. "What's that supposed to be?" Dylan asked, trying to sound bored but not quite succeeding. Jasmine didn't answer immediately. Instead, she tapped the screen a few times, then turned it so Trevor could see. On the screen was a video, shaky but clear enough. It showed Trevor tripping a freshman in the cafeteria 2 weeks ago, laughing as the younger boy's lunch tray clattered to the floor. "I started recording after you pushed Alex Chen into the lockers last month," Jasmine explained, swiping to another video. This one showed Trevor and Ryan cornering a smaller boy, taking his calculator and playing keep away while he jumped futilely to retrieve it. "You've been spying on me?" Trevor's voice had lost its mocking edge, replaced by something harder. "Not spying. Documenting." Jasmine swiped again. This one's from yesterday. The video clearly showed Ryan kicking her book down the aisle of the bus, followed by Trevor's taunting laughter. "So what?" Trevor tried to sound dismissive, but Jasmine could see uncertainty creeping into his expression. "You think anyone cares about a few jokes?" "I don't know," Jasmine said, her thumb hovering over her screen. "Why don't we ask everyone right now?" Before Trevor could react, Jasmine raised her voice. "Excuse me, can I have everyone's attention for a minute?" Heads turned throughout the bus. Even Mr. Wilson glanced in the rearview mirror, though he kept his eyes mostly on the road. "What are you doing?" Trevor hissed, reaching for her phone. Jasmine stepped back, bumping into the seat behind her. "I have something I think everyone should see." Give me the phone, Trevor demanded. His friendly facade completely gone now. Lily Chen, who had been watching the exchange with growing concern, suddenly spoke up. Leave her alone, Trevor. We can all see what you're doing. Stay out of this, Trevor snapped. No, I don't think I will, Lily replied, standing up. I'm tired of pretending I don't see you bullying people. A murmur ran through the bus. Other students were turning in their seats, watching the scene unfold. Trevor looked around, suddenly aware that he had become the center of attention in a way he hadn't planned. This is stupid, he muttered. We were just talking. Is that what you call it? Another voice chimed in. It was Ben Washington from the debate team, because it looked like three guys surrounding one girl who clearly wanted to be left alone. Nobody asked you. Nerd, Ryan shot back, but his voice lacked conviction. Mr. Wilson's voice came from the front of the bus. What's going on back there? Everyone needs to be in their seats. There aren't enough seats, Lily called back. That's why Jasmine is standing. But Trevor and his friends are standing too, and they're blocking the aisle. The bus slowed as Mr. Wilson prepared to pull over. All of you need to find seats now, he ordered. Or I'm writing everyone up. I'll make room, Lily said, scooting over in her seat and patting the space next to her. Jasmine can sit here. Trevor moved to block Jasmine's path. We're not done talking. Yes, Jasmine said firmly. We are. She tried to step around him, but Trevor shifted again, keeping himself between her and the offered seat. Let her pass. Collins, Mr. Wilson called. The bus now pulled to the side of the road. Right now, Trevor hesitated, clearly weighing his options. Getting in trouble with the bus driver could mean suspension from the next game. Coach Peterson had already warned him about his behavior. This isn't over, he muttered, finally stepping aside. Jasmine moved past him and slid in next to Lily, murmuring a quiet, "Thank you." She could feel Trevor's eyes boring into the back of her head, but she kept her gaze forward as the bus pulled back into traffic. That took guts, Lily whispered. I've wanted to say something to him for months. Me too, Jasmine admitted. I just never had the courage before. What's on your phone? Lily asked. You really have videos of him bullying people? Jasmine nodded. I started keeping track after I saw him push a 7th grader off the sidewalk. At first I just wrote down dates and what happened, but then I realized nobody would believe me without proof. Are you going to show Principal Davis? Jasmine hadn't thought that far ahead. She had been so focused on surviving the bus ride that she hadn't considered what to do next. I don't know, she said honestly. Part of me thinks I should, but what? But what if it just makes things worse? Jasmine stared down at her phone, at the evidence she'd been collecting for weeks. Trevor has a lot of friends. People like him. Lily shook her head. They don't like him. They're afraid of him. There's a difference. The bus turned onto Maple Street, approaching Jasmine's stop. She gathered her things, aware that this conversation was far from over. Thanks again, she said to Lily as the bus slowed. Don't thank me yet, Lily replied. You still have to decide what to do with those videos. Jasmine nodded, then made her way to the front of the bus. She could feel eyes on her. Not just Trevor's now, but everyone's. Something had shifted on bus number 42 today. A balance of power had tilted and everyone knew it. Everything okay? Mr. Wilson asked quietly as she passed him. Yes, Jasmine said. Thank you. She stepped off the bus into the drizzling rain, her mind whirling with thoughts. The bus pulled away, and through the window she caught a final glimpse of Trevor watching her, his expression unreadable. The walk home gave her time to think. By the time she reached her front door, her clothes were damp and her shoes were muddy, but her mind was clearer than it had been in weeks. Her mother wasn't home yet, working a double shift at the hospital, but her father was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. Hey, sweetheart, he called when he heard the door. How was school? Jasmine set her backpack down and took a deep breath. Dad, I need to show you something. 10 minutes later, they sat at the kitchen table, Jasmine's phone between them. Her father had watched the videos in silence, his expression growing more serious with each one. How long has this been going on? He asked finally. With me. Just since yesterday, really. But he does this to lots of kids. Her father rubbed his temples. And no teachers have noticed? Trevor's smart about when he does it, Jasmine explained. Never when teachers are watching. And he's popular. Captain of the basketball team, friends with everyone who matters. Most of the time, if anyone sees him, they just look the other way. Like you did. The question wasn't accusatory, but it still stung. Yes, Jasmine admitted. Like I did. Until yesterday, her father nodded slowly. And now you have to decide what to do with this information. What would you do? He considered the question carefully. I'd think about what outcome I wanted. Do you want this boy punished? Do you want him to apologize? Do you want him to change his behavior? I want him to stop, Jasmine said firmly. Not just with me, with everyone. That's a worthy goal, her father said. But how you get there matters too. Publicly shaming him might stop the behavior temporarily, but it might also make him resentful, maybe even more dangerous. Jasmine hadn't considered that. So what should I do? I can't answer that for you, sweetheart. But I can tell you this. Whatever you decide, your mom and I will support you. He squeezed her hand. And I'm proud of you for standing up today, even if you're not sure what to do next. Jasmine spent the evening thinking about her options. She could show the videos to Principal Davis, but that felt like tattling. She could confront Trevor privately, but that might be dangerous. She could do nothing and hope that today's standoff was enough to make him back off. But that wouldn't help the other kids he tormented. None of the options felt quite right. It wasn't until she was getting ready for bed that an idea began to take shape. She thought about what her father had said, about outcomes and methods, about wanting Trevor to change, not just be punished. She thought about what she knew about Trevor, his need for attention, his concern about failing English, the way he carefully maintained his image at school. By the time she turned out her light, Jasmine had a plan. It was risky, and it might backfire completely. But for the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of control. Tomorrow she would take a stand, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever felt small in Trevor's shadow. As she drifted off to sleep, her last thought was of the look on Trevor's face when he saw the videos. Not anger, as she'd expected, but fear. Fear that his carefully constructed image might crumble. Fear that people might see who he really was. And in that fear, Jasmine had glimpsed an opportunity. Morning arrived with weak sunshine breaking through the clouds. Jasmine woke before her alarm, her mind already racing with thoughts of the day ahead. She dressed with unusual care, choosing a bright blue sweater her mother had given her for her birthday instead of her usual muted colors. Today she didn't want to blend in. You look nice, her mother commented as Jasmine came downstairs for breakfast. She had returned late from her hospital shift but was already up, making coffee in her favorite chipped mug. Thanks, Jasmine said, pouring herself a bowl of cereal. I have a presentation today. It wasn't exactly a lie. She did have a plan to present something, just not in the way her mother might imagine. Her father looked up from his newspaper, studying her face. He knew what today might bring after their conversation yesterday. Need a ride? He asked. Jasmine shook her head. No thanks. I'm taking the bus. Her mother raised an eyebrow at the unusual response but didn't comment. Jasmine usually jumped at any chance to avoid the bus. Call if you need anything, her father said as Jasmine shouldered her backpack. Anything at all. The bus stop was busier than usual. A cluster of students huddled against the morning chill. Zoe spotted her immediately, breaking away from a conversation to rush over. Where were you yesterday? You never texted me. Her voice was thick with worry. I called twice. Guilt washed over Jasmine. In all the drama, she had completely forgotten her promise to text Zoe when she got home. I'm so sorry, she said. Something happened on the bus with Trevor and I heard, Zoe cut in. Lily texted me last night. She said you stood up to him, that you have videos of him bullying people. News traveled fast in high school. Jasmine shouldn't have been surprised. It's complicated, she said, aware of curious eyes watching them. I'll explain everything later. The rumble of the approaching bus ended their conversation. As it pulled up to the curb, Jasmine felt her heart rate quicken. Would Trevor be on the morning bus? What would he do after yesterday's confrontation? But as students filed aboard, there was no sign of Trevor or his friends. Jasmine found a seat near the middle, Zoe sliding in beside her. Spill, Zoe demanded once they were settled. I want details. Jasmine recounted the events of the previous afternoon, Trevor blocking her in the aisle, her revelation about the videos, Lily and others speaking up. With each word, she felt the weight of it all lifting slightly from her shoulders. So what are you going to do now? Zoe asked when she finished. Show the videos to Principal Davis? Not exactly, Jasmine said, lowering her voice. I have a different idea. She explained her plan as the bus wound its way toward Lincoln High. By the time they arrived, Zoe was wide-eyed. "That's either brilliant or completely insane," she said as they disembarked. "Maybe both." "I'm hoping for brilliant," Jasmine replied with a nervous smile. "But I need your help." "Whatever you need," Zoe promised. "I've got your back." They parted ways at the main entrance, Zoe heading to her locker while Jasmine made a detour to the computer lab. She had arrived early deliberately, wanting to prepare before the halls filled with students. The computer lab was almost empty. Just Mr. Patel, the IT teacher, and a couple of seniors working on a coding project. "Good morning, Jasmine," Mr. Patel greeted her. "You're here early." "I have a project to finish," she explained, settling at a computer in the back corner. "Is it okay if I work here for a bit?" "Of course," he said, returning to his desk. "Let me know if you need any help." Jasmine connected her phone to the computer and got to work. For the next 20 minutes, she focused intently on the screen, occasionally checking the time to ensure she wouldn't be late for her first class. When the warning bell rang, she disconnected her phone, saved her work to a flash drive, and headed to her locker. The hallways were crowded now, filled with the usual morning chaos of slamming lockers and overlapping conversations. She spotted Trevor almost immediately. He was by his locker, surrounded by his usual group of friends. Their eyes met briefly across the hallway, and Jasmine felt a flutter of anxiety in her chest. But Trevor simply looked away, turning back to his conversation as if she didn't exist. It wasn't what she had expected. No confrontation, no threats, not even a glare, just nothing. "He's pretending nothing happened," Zoe whispered, appearing at Jasmine's side. "Classic move." "Maybe," Jasmine said, watching Trevor laugh at something Ryan said. "Or maybe he's waiting to see what I'll do next." The morning classes passed in a blur. Jasmine found it hard to concentrate, her mind constantly returning to her plan, checking for flaws, imagining outcomes. By lunchtime, her nerves were stretched thin. "You don't have to do this," Zoe reminded her as they stood in the lunch line. "We could just take the videos to Principal Davis." "I know," Jasmine said. "But this isn't just about getting Trevor in trouble. It's about changing things." Zoe squeezed her arm in silent support. They sat at their usual table, and Jasmine tried to eat despite the knot in her stomach. Across the cafeteria, Trevor sat with the basketball team, his back to her. He seemed completely relaxed, laughing and joking as if yesterday had never happened. "He thinks it's over," Jasmine murmured, watching him. "He thinks I was bluffing." As if on cue, Trevor turned, his eyes finding hers across the crowded room. He raised an eyebrow, a subtle challenge in his expression. Jasmine held his gaze steadily. Then deliberately she pulled out her phone, opened an app, and held it up just high enough for him to see. The effect was immediate. Trevor's confident smile faltered. He turned back to his friends quickly, but not before Jasmine saw the flash of uncertainty in his eyes. "Phase 1 complete," Zoe whispered with a small smile. "He's rattled." The afternoon passed slowly. In English class, Mrs. Patterson announced a group project on "To Kill a Mockingbird," and Jasmine held her breath as the teacher assigned partners. Trevor Collins and Jasmine Williams, Mrs. Patterson called out, oblivious to the tension between them. "You'll be analyzing the theme of moral courage." The irony wasn't lost on Jasmine. Beside her, Zoe stifled a laugh. After class, Trevor approached her desk, his expression guarded. "So I guess we're partners." "Looks that way," Jasmine replied coolly. "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "About yesterday, we should meet in the library after school," she interrupted. "To discuss the project." Trevor blinked, clearly thrown by her businesslike tone. Can't. I have basketball practice." "Tomorrow, then." "During lunch." "Fine," he agreed, clearly uncomfortable. "Whatever." As he walked away, Zoe slid into the seat next to her. "Well played," she whispered. "He has no idea what's coming." The final bell couldn't come soon enough. When it finally rang, Jasmine hurried to her locker, heart pounding. The next part of her plan was the riskiest, and timing was crucial. She met Lily near the computer lab as they had arranged via text during history class. "Are you sure about this?" Lily asked, concern etched on her face. "No," Jasmine admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." Together, they walked to the gymnasium where the basketball team would be gathering for practice. The hallway outside was crowded with players and cheerleaders, everyone talking and laughing as they prepared for their respective practices. Trevor was by the water fountain, his gym bag slung over one shoulder. He stiffened when he saw Jasmine approaching. "Collins!" she called, her voice carrying down the hallway. "Got a minute?" Conversations hushed as heads turned to watch. Trevor hesitated, clearly weighing his options. Walking away would look weak, but confronting her might escalate a situation he thought he had under control. "What do you want?" he asked finally, trying to sound bored. Jasmine closed the distance between them, aware that they now had an audience. "I wanted to give you this," she said, pulling a flash drive from her pocket. Trevor stared at it. "What is it?" "It's a copy of all my videos," she explained, keeping her voice neutral. "Every incident I've recorded over the past 3 months." The hallway had gone completely silent. Even Coach Peterson had paused in the doorway of his office, watching the exchange with interest. Trevor's face reddened. "I don't want your stupid videos," he hissed. "I thought you might want to see them before I show them to everyone else," Jasmine continued as if he hadn't spoken. "There's some stuff on there you probably wouldn't want people to see. Are you threatening me?" Trevor's voice rose slightly, drawing more attention. Jasmine shook her head. "No, I'm giving you a choice." "What kind of choice?" "Watch the videos. All of them. Then meet me in the library tomorrow at lunch and we can discuss what happens next." Trevor looked at the flash drive, then at the growing crowd around them. His teammates were watching with undisguised curiosity. Coach Peterson had taken a step closer, clearly trying to determine if he needed to intervene. "Fine," Trevor snapped, snatching the drive from her hand. "But this better not be some kind of setup." "It's not a setup," Jasmine assured him. "It's an opportunity." She turned and walked away, Lily falling into step beside her. Behind them, the hallway erupted in whispers. "That was intense," Lily murmured as they rounded the corner. "Do you think he'll actually watch them?" "He will," Jasmine said confidently. "He's too curious not to." What Trevor didn't know, what no one except Zoe knew, was that the flash drive contained more than just the bullying videos. It also contained something Jasmine had spent the morning creating, a carefully edited compilation that told a different kind of story. It was a risk, this plan of hers. It might backfire completely, but as she and Lily pushed through the main doors into the afternoon sunshine, Jasmine felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in months, she wasn't reacting to Trevor's behavior. She was taking control of the narrative. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring. Tonight she had one more video to make, the final piece of her plan, the one that would either change everything or fail spectacularly. Either way, she was done being invisible. The library was unusually quiet at lunch the next day. Most students were in the cafeteria or outside enjoying the brief appearance of sunshine after days of rain. Jasmine sat alone at a table near the back, a laptop open in front of her, her lunch untouched beside it. She checked her watch again. 12:17. Trevor was late. Maybe he wasn't coming. Maybe he had decided to ignore her challenge, to pretend none of this was happening. Or worse, maybe he had watched the videos and was now planning some kind of retaliation. The library door swung open, and Jasmine's heart jumped. But it was only Ms. Garcia, the librarian, returning with a stack of books. "Everything okay, Jasmine?" Ms. Garcia asked, noticing her anxious expression. "Yes, thanks," Jasmine replied, forcing a smile. "Just waiting for someone." As if on cue, the door opened again. This time it was Trevor. He stood in the doorway for a moment, scanning the room until his eyes found Jasmine. He looked different somehow, less confident, his usual swagger replaced by something more hesitant. He made his way to her table, dropping into the chair across from her without a greeting. The flash drive clattered onto the table between them. "I watched them," he said, his voice low. Jasmine studied his face, looking for signs of anger or defiance. Instead, she saw something unexpected. Uncertainty, maybe even shame. "All of them?" she asked. Trevor nodded. "Yeah, all of them." He paused, his fingers drumming nervously on the table. "How long have you been following me around with a camera?" "I wasn't following you," Jasmine explained. "I just started recording whenever I saw you bothering someone." Which happened a lot. Trevor flinched slightly at her words. "So what now? You show these to Principal Davis and I get suspended? Is that the plan?" "That was never the plan," Jasmine said quietly. "Did you watch everything on the drive? Including the last video?" A look of confusion crossed his face. "What last video?" "I saw the ones of me, messing with people. But then there was this weird compilation that didn't make sense. Jasmine turned the laptop so they could both see the screen. Let me show you. She clicked on a file labeled final.mp4. The screen filled with a series of clips, but not the bullying videos Trevor had expected. Instead, these were moments he probably didn't even remember. Helping a teacher carry books when he thought no one was watching. Standing up for a teammate during a heated argument with a rival school. The time he'd given his lunch to a freshman who had forgotten his lunch money. What is this? Trevor asked, his voice barely above a whisper. This is also you, Jasmine said simply. I didn't just record the bad stuff. I recorded everything. The video continued, now showing split-screen images. On one side, Trevor laughing as he knocked books from someone's hands. On the other, Trevor staying after school to help clean the gym without being asked. I don't understand, Trevor said, his eyes fixed on the screen. What's your point? My point is that you're not just one thing, Jasmine replied. You're not just the guy who bullies people to feel powerful. You're also the guy who helps when he thinks no one's looking. The video ended with a simple question displayed on the screen. Which Trevor Collins do you want people to see? Silence fell between them. Trevor stared at the blank screen, his expression unreadable. Is this some kind of trick? He asked finally. Some way to embarrass me? Jasmine shook her head. No tricks, just truth. So what do you want from me? It was the question Jasmine had been waiting for. She closed the laptop and leaned forward. I want you to stop bullying people, she said directly. Not because you're afraid of getting in trouble, but because you're better than that. Trevor scoffed. You don't know me. I know more than you think, Jasmine countered. I've been watching you for months, remember? I've seen who you are when you think no one's paying attention. That's the real Trevor Collins, not the one who pushes people around. Trevor looked away, uncomfortable with her assessment. Even if that's true, what am I supposed to do now? Just suddenly be nice to everyone? Nobody would believe it. They might, Jasmine said, if you started with an apology. An apology, Trevor repeated as if the word was foreign to him. To who? To everyone you've hurt? Starting with the kid whose science project you ruined last week. Trevor's eyes widened. How did you? I told you I've been paying attention. Jasmine pulled out a sheet of paper from her backpack and slid it across the table. This is a list of people who deserve an apology. Some of them might not want to hear it, and that's their right, but you owe it to them to try. Trevor stared at the list. There were at least 20 names on it. This is crazy, he muttered. Maybe, Jasmine agreed, but it's better than the alternative. Which is? I take these videos to Principal Davis, she said evenly, and to Coach Peterson, and to your parents, and post them online where college recruiters might see them. Trevor's head snapped up. You wouldn't. I don't want to, Jasmine said honestly. That's why we're having this conversation. I'm giving you a chance to fix this yourself. Why? Trevor demanded. Why would you do that? After everything I've done? Jasmine considered the question carefully. It was something she had asked herself repeatedly over the past 2 days. Because revenge just continues the cycle, she said finally, and somebody has to break it. Trevor looked down at the list again, his brow furrowed. Some of these people? I don't even remember messing with them. That's part of the problem, Jasmine pointed out. It meant so little to you that you don't even remember. But it might have ruined their whole day. Or week, or made them afraid to come to school. The truth of her words seemed to hit Trevor hard. He ran a hand through his hair, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted. You can, Jasmine assured him. I've seen you do harder things on the basketball court. A ghost of a smile flickered across Trevor's face. Basketball is different. I know what I'm doing there. Think of this as learning a new skill, Jasmine suggested. It might feel awkward at first, but it gets easier with practice. Trevor was quiet for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he reached for the list, folding it carefully and tucking it into his pocket. I'll try, he said, his voice rough with emotion. But I can't promise everyone will accept my apology. That's fair, Jasmine nodded. The important thing is that you make the effort. Trevor stood up, pushing his chair back. So what happens to the videos? They stay with me, Jasmine said. As insurance, you don't trust me? There was a hint of the old Trevor in his defensive tone. I want to, Jasmine replied honestly. Show me that I can. Trevor held her gaze for a moment, then nodded slightly. I'll see you in English. As he turned to leave, Jasmine called after him. "Trevor." He paused, looking back. "Start with the easy ones," she advised. "The people you think might be willing to hear you out. Build from there." Something shifted in Trevor's expression, a softening around the eyes, a release of tension in his shoulders. "Thanks," he said quietly. Then he was gone, the library door swinging shut behind him. Jasmine exhaled slowly, the tension of the past few days finally beginning to ease. She didn't know if her plan would work. Trevor might decide that apologizing was too difficult, that it was easier to go back to his old ways. But something in his expression had given her hope. "How did it go?" a voice whispered. Zoe emerged from between the bookshelves where she had been hiding, just in case things went badly. "I think it went okay," Jasmine said cautiously. He took the list. The list of people he needs to apologize to. Zoe settled into the chair Trevor had vacated. "That's huge." "It's a start," Jasmine agreed. "But we'll see what happens next." What happened next surprised everyone, including Jasmine. That afternoon in English class, Trevor arrived early and took a seat next to Ben Washington, one of the names on Jasmine's list. She couldn't hear what was said, but the shock on Ben's face slowly gave way to a cautious nod. One by one, over the next few days, Trevor worked his way through the list. Some conversations were brief, barely more than a mumbled apology and a quick exit. Others lasted longer, evolving into genuine exchanges. Not everyone was receptive. A few simply walked away, unwilling to hear what he had to say, but many were willing to at least listen. The atmosphere in the school began to shift subtly. The tension that had followed Trevor through the hallways eased. People who had once ducked into classrooms to avoid him now acknowledged him with tentative waves or nods. On Friday, a week after their library meeting, Trevor approached Jasmine at her locker. "I did it," he said without preamble. "Everyone on the list. Well, almost everyone. 3 people wouldn't talk to me at all, but I tried." "That's all anyone can ask," Jasmine said, genuinely impressed. "How does it feel?" Trevor considered the question. "Weird," he admitted, "but also better. I don't know how to explain it." "You don't have to," Jasmine assured him. "So what now?" Trevor asked. "We go back to ignoring each other? Pretend none of this happened?" Jasmine shook her head. "I don't think we can do that. Too much has changed." "Yeah," Trevor agreed, leaning against the lockers. "I guess it has." They stood in awkward silence for a moment, neither sure what came next. "We still have that English project," Jasmine pointed out. "Moral courage and To Kill a Mockingbird." A small smile tugged at Trevor's lips. "Something tells me you've got some thoughts on that topic." "A few," Jasmine admitted, returning his smile. As they walked to class together, drawing curious looks from passing students, Jasmine realized that this was never about bringing Trevor down. It was about lifting everyone up, including Trevor himself. The quiet girl on the bus had found her voice, and in doing so, had helped others find theirs too. Sometimes the most powerful response to darkness wasn't more darkness, but light. And sometimes the person who needed saving the most was the one you least expected.